Once again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining in today, our webinar on RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. So for today's webinar, we're going to jump into some introductions. We're going to take a look at what is RoomKeyPMS payments, how are payments reconciled, why is reconciliation beneficial, and we'll take a look at how to use the tools with RoomKeyPMS payments. We'll discuss when you can start using these features, and we'll wrap up our webinar with a bit of a summary and Q&A session. Now, before we jump in, I just want to display a poll on screen for those of you that are, and I'm just going to ask where everyone is joining us from. So whereabouts is your hotel located? Got a couple of answers to select from on screen there. So I can see that the majority of our participants for today are joining us from USA. We do have a couple of people joining in from Canada and no one outside of North America there. So I just wanted to open up with that question because today's presentation with RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam is a product that is exclusive to the United States right now. We are working on releasing it out to our wider clientele in Canada and the rest of North America as well. So I just wanted to let everyone know that for today, our RoomKeyPMS payments product is available for US-based clients. So let's jump into our introduction. I am Tasha LeClaire. I'm a trainer and implementation specialist with RoomKey. Joined RoomKey in 2015, and prior to that, I did work in hotels and hospitality for about 10 years. Alongside me today, I do have our Director of Customer Experience, Mr. William Tam. He's been with RoomKey since 2014, and prior to that, he also worked in hotels and hospitality as well. I'll be directing today's webinar. William will be overseeing the chat and the Q&A. So as we go through today's webinar, if you do have any questions, go ahead and pop them into the Q&A. William will be able to answer questions as we go along, and any questions that are left over, we are able to answer those live at the end of the session. Now, for today's webinar, it is being recorded, and at the end of today's webinar, there will be a survey available for you to fill out. It's a quick survey, only about 3 or 4 questions there, but I do ask you, fill out the survey if you have any suggestions for us, and much appreciated. And just a quick reminder, this is a monthly webinar. So our next month's webinar for April is scheduled, and that topic will be covering Rate Wizard training. So let's jump into our topic for today. That is RoomKeyPMS payment. For us, we want to define our product as a seamless integrated payment solution for our clients. So for example, we do offer credit card tokenization and chip and PIN EMV devices. So this makes it an all-in-one solution. When you purchase a RoomKeyPMS payment product powered by Fullsteam, we are also helping you arrange any devices that can accommodate chip and PIN authentication with card present. And we do also support credit card tokenization for card not present payments as well. Now, this product is PCI compliant. We are level 1 certified with our payment product. Also incorporates automated reconciliation. This includes automated daily batching and reconciliation. We'll be taking a look at that in a little more detail through today's presentation as well. This product offers a single sign-on portal for reporting purposes, so there's no need to log out and log back in or log into a separate piece of software for your reporting. It's all contained within RoomKeyPMS with a single sign-on. Lastly, it also supports our mobile check-in and checkout products that were developed last year. So this means that for any properties that are using our mobile check-in and checkout, where you send pre-arrival notification to a guest and allows them to complete their contact information, with our payment product, that guest can also enter in their credit card information, securely tokenized, and that ensures that you can collect payment before the guest arrives. You can also collect payment as part of checkout. So a guest could enter their credit card information into the mobile checkout, and that will allow you to process payment at the time of checkout as well. So like I said, I want to take a little closer look at that automated reconciliation. So let's talk about reconciliation in a little more detail and how our product can help support those processes. With automated reconciliation with our payment product, we do offer a transaction reconciliation report, which is actually going to do the reconciliation for you automatically. Here is an example of that reconciliation report for March 14th. And you can see on the report, it right away tells you what revenue has been recorded in the hotel, and also compares that to what has been recorded through the RoomKeyPMS payments product. So right off the bat, without having to search or print out separate reporting, you can see that reconciliation on screen within RoomKey itself. Alongside with this reconciliation, these amounts are automatically batched. So for any past dates, the batch totals will appear below. With this reconciliation, not only will it let you know what has been reconciled for the current day or batched for past days, this reconciliation tool will also identify if there's any discrepancies. So this example here on the right-hand side shows a transaction reconciliation report, but there are non-matching transactions that are occurring. So we can see that those appear highlighted in blue versus the batched or reconciled amounts that appear highlighted in magenta. So with the automatic reconciliation here, where we are pulling out any non-matching transactions, we go one step further with our transaction reconciliation report, and we give you tools to be able to resolve these non-matching transactions or these issues that could occur between reconciliation. So our RoomKeyPMS payment powered by Fullsteam product is going to allow you to process these payments, automatically reconcile for the day, and also identify if there are any discrepancies with that reconciliation and give you tools to be able to resolve those all within a single report. And we will see this as part of today's demonstration. So let's jump right into our demonstration for today. I'm going to bring up a database. Wonderful. So this is just a demo database. This is not a live hotel. For our purposes today, we're going to see a couple of examples of how RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam can be triggered from within RoomKey itself. So I'm going to do an example here with an advanced deposit. I have a future reservation. Here on the right-hand side, I'll select the reservations. My res ID for Chris Johnston. Here I can see that this is a future arrival coming in tomorrow, and it is a prepaid reservation. So I have a credit card on file. It is a virtual credit card that is used for prepayment for this particular OTA. So I'm going to take prepayment by selecting post payment, and RoomKey automatically pulls up the credit card information for me and the amount for the prepayment, since this is a prepaid reservation. And I can select OK, exit. So this is where we are able to trigger the RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. We have a little Fullsteam window pop up, allowing us to process the credit card. In this case, the action is going to be to settle the amount. So I'm going to take that as a full prepayment for this reservation. Now, when I select post, I'm going to see the progress of that processing on screen. And once that is approved, I've received my approval message, have my authorization code, transaction ID, and it does reconfirm the credit card type that was used to process this amount. So once I receive an approval message from Fullsteam, I can select close on this window. Then when I go to the guest folio, select the folio tab here, I can see that payment now appearing as a line item on the guest folio. So that prepayment rests here. And when I right click on the payment, you can select credit card info. This is going to display the details of the credit card that was used to process this payment, and it includes that authorization number. So I know that that did go through and was approved by the RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. So the next thing that I wanted to show you with this how we can engage with that payment processor is for an authorization at check-in. So I'm going to go here to our arrival screen. I have one guest arriving today. They do have a credit card on file. So when I check in this guest, let me make sure the room is available that we want. There we go. So when I check in this guest, I am able to authorize the credit card as part of this check-in process. Now, an authorization will not take the money from the guest account, but it will simply place a hold on those funds within the guest account. We'll hold those funds until the guest checks out and uses a portion of those funds to pay for their stay. Now, I already have a credit card on file, and I want to authorize the credit card for room and tax, which this database is set up to automatically authorize for. And I'm going to enter in an additional amount here into the available credit. So I'm going to authorize for room and tax plus this $100 of available credit for this check-in. So I can select check-in on this screen. This is now going to trigger that Fullsteam window to appear once again. The difference with this, though, is that this action is authorizing an amount rather than settling an amount, where we settled that amount for the prepayment. We can see the amount that's going to be authorized, which represents room and tax plus the $100. And when I select post, I can now see the process of that transaction there. And I can also receive my approval message with those pieces of information, the authorization, the transaction ID, and confirmation of the credit card type. Go ahead and close and review any notes on file for this guest. They're checked in directly into my in-house screen now. Now, because this was an authorization for this guest, their record of that authorization does not appear on the folio. It's not a full payment, but rather I can review that authorization from the transactions menu. So I'll select transactions, and here I can view authorized transactions. So there's that authorization for this guest as part of their check-in. It includes the amount that was authorized and the authorization code. So we've seen an advanced deposit, an authorization, and I do also want to show you one more example with a checkout. So for guests at this property, an authorization is required at check-in, and then at checkout, any unused funds are automatically released back to the guest there. So when I go to my departure screen for this database, I'll see I have a departure for today. Again, I can take a look at the authorization for this guest here under authorized transactions, and I see I have an amount that's already been authorized using their credit card, their Visa credit card on file. So now when I go to click checkout, our checkout screen is going to display, and it's going to show me what charges are on file for this guest. And it's going to pull through the credit card information automatically. So I can select checkout. And this time with the RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam window, it's going to let me know that this is not only a settlement, but a settlement process at the time of checkout. So that's why the action shows as checkout. And we're going to be using a portion of that authorization amount. So just $287.50. This time when I select post, it's going to process that transaction. But what you'll notice is that with my approval message, I receive only the transaction ID. And that's because it's using the original authorization code to authorize for this payment. So I still receive my approval message. I know that those funds are now processed for this guest. And I can close this window, which is going to complete the checkout process for this guest. Now, you can always review your checked out information. Just on the right-hand side, you would select checkout. And for this guest that just checked out on her folio, I can now see that payment that was processed at the time of checkout. And when I right-click, I can view that credit card info where the authorization number is now pulled through onto the actual amount. So we've seen how you can use RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam to process credit cards before guest arrival. While they're in-house, we can also take authorization amounts, and we can use our Fullsteam payment window to process that authorized amount to settle at checkout. So now that we've made some transactions inside RoomKey database, let's take a look at the automated reconciliation. So I'm going to go directly to report, and within the online processing section, I have access to a payment reconciliation report. This report is a live report, so it does take a couple minutes just to pull pieces of information directly from the database and the processor, and it is a pop-up. So I can click and drag this and still view information in behind my screen, but I do like to view it as a full screen window. So I'm just going to make this full screen for us today here. Now, I'm just going to skip over the non-matching transactions at the top here to scroll down a little bit. And so we can see the reconciliation down below. Because it is an automated reconciliation, if you have any days where there are no transactions, you'll notice that it'll simply let you know there are no transactions on this date. So pretty straightforward messaging there. But when you do have transactions appearing on a single day, like today, you'll see this reconciliation start to happen here. So on the left-hand side, it will tell you how much payments have been recorded inside the hotel database and compare that to what has been recorded through RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. Now for each day, you can click on the date header to expand that list, and it will show you these reconciled amounts grouped by credit card type. So here we can see our MasterCard totals and our Visa card totals. You can go one step further as well, and you can click on credit card type to expand and view the individual transactions recorded for this particular credit card on this day. So this outlines key pieces of information that are collected for each type of payment. What is recorded in the hotel will appear on the left-hand side. What is recorded in RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam will appear on the right. For each transaction, you'll have a question mark next to the authorization code. And when you hover over that question mark, that will expand to show you what appears as the description or reference field for this transaction. So specifically this one for Lisa McDonald that we just processed in today's demonstration, this was a checkout. So I can see that that payment was processed at the time of checkout. Same with this one for Rachel Taylor. Now off to the right-hand side, these question marks will just expand to explain where those payments are coming from. So that was through RoomKeyPMS interfaces. And then this timestamp will just reconfirm when that transaction was created and processed through the processor itself. So that really helps out. You can see you don't have to print separate reports. You don't have to go and batch out or batch close a separate processor. It all is contained within RoomKey in one single report here. And because of our navigation tools at the top of this screen, you are able to look back at past dates. So if I scroll back up to the top of the screen here, I can use the date range in the top left-hand corner to view past date transaction data as well. By default, this report will always show you the most recent 7 days, including the current day. So I'm excited to also take a look at these non-matching transactions. So we've got two sections that are showing up at the top on this transaction reconciliation report. I have smart match transactions and non-matching transactions. These are both issues that are occurring inside the database right now that are preventing these transactions from being automatically reconciled and placed into the batches down below. So I'm going to start with these smart match transactions at the top. Here we can see that we have a transaction that was recorded in the RoomKeyPMS database for the hotel, and it is missing an authorization number and transaction ID. Off to the right-hand side, I see that there is a payment that was recorded through RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam, and it does have some similar information. So what has happened here is these two transactions are non-matching transactions. So usually they would appear down below below. However, RoomKey has identified that there are similarities between these two transactions. So for example, the MasterCard, the credit card type, and the last 4 digits match. So because there's these similarities between these two transactions, this transaction reconciliation report has actually identified those as a potential match. So it has identified these as smart match transactions. Now on the right-hand side, I can view the match points for these two transactions. If I hover over the number 4 here, this is going to expand and show me which criteria the reconciliation report is looking at to verify if these are matching transactions. So we can see 4 of 5 criteria match. The only thing that doesn't match exactly is the cardholder name. So if I see here, the name is Rachel Clark, and then in RoomKey, it's recorded as Rachel Clark with an E. So slight difference in the spelling there. It's pretty close. I'm quite confident that these are matching transactions. So I'm going to tell the reconciliation report that I want to match these two transactions together. Now I have access to a button in the top right-hand corner of this Smart Match Transactions section that allows me to match all selected transactions. So I can see here that these ones are selected, this little checkbox off to the left. So I can go ahead and select Match All Selected Transactions, and this is going to match these up for me. Access to this button is permission-based. We will talk a little bit about the new permission sets that are available with this new product after we do our demonstration today. So I'm going to select Match All Selected Transactions. I'm going to see a progress on screen, and now it confirms that these transactions have been matched. And here it's even telling you that it's going to bring over the transaction ID and authorization code. So I can simply close this message and my reconciliation report is going to update automatically. So I can see that I have resolved those smart match transactions on the top of the screen. And if I click into today's reconciliation, I can, oh, sorry, wrong one there. I can click into the MasterCard. And now I can see that transaction for Rachel Clark has now dropped into my reconciliation for today's date. On the left-hand side, I can see that I now have an authorization number and a transaction ID for this record inside RoomKeyPMS Hotel. And anytime you do a match, whether it's Smart Match, you will see a letter M icon next to the timestamp for that transaction. When I hover on the icon, it's going to tell me that this was a manual match, when it was performed, and it'll identify the clerk ID who made that match. So that information is retained as well. Now you will notice it is unique on this transaction. I have the cardholder name is highlighted in both cases, and that's because that is the one criteria that did not match when we were doing our smart match. So it does remain highlighted just for reference purposes. I'm aware that in RoomKeyPMS database, the guest name is recorded with an E on the end versus on the credit card that was processed, there's no E. So it does retain some of those pieces of information there. Now I'm going to scroll back up to the top and we're going to take a look at how we can resolve the remaining non-matching transactions. Now these non-matching transactions do have a bit of a clue on how to begin to resolve them. It lets me know that I can click on a transaction to ignore or create a match. I'm going to start with this transaction here for Krista Halderson. You can see that I have a record of payment recorded inside RoomKeyPMS Hotel database. Again, it does not have an authorization number or transaction ID. And I can see that there's no corresponding transaction processed through the RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. So I'm going to follow the instructions on this section, and I'm going to click on the transaction itself. And this is now going to expand. It shows me the transaction on top with a couple of options for resolving it. And then down below, I can actually see the details file for this guest, Res ID 1012. So this is the guest folio, and I can actually scroll through the guest folio information on file here. When I get down to the bottom, I can see that there is a payment recorded. So it looks like this is the payment that was recorded and pulled through as a non-matching transaction. So because I know that this payment is on file for the guest, I do want to make sure that we are processing this amount to the credit card on file. In past versions or past types of reconciliation, you would have to close out of here, go to the actual guest reservation, click on post payment, and go through several steps in order to process this payment. Another option would also be to close out of this area and manually process the credit card. But with this new reconciliation report, we can actually create that corresponding transaction. We can process that transaction through RoomKeyPMS payments from this screen itself. So I'm going to select Create Fullsteam Transaction. That's going to process through, and I will receive my approval message on screen right away. And again, we see that we're pulling through authorization code, transaction ID, and it does confirm that credit card type. So when I close this window, the reconciliation report is going to update, and that transaction no longer appears in my non-matching transactions. That will now drop down into today's reconciliation here in the American Express area, and we can see that this now appears part of today's reconciliation. And because it is a match, I have this icon next to my timestamp again, and again it is confirming when that match was performed, and it identifies the clerk ID who made that match. See that the authorization and transaction ID are automatically pulled through, and it now matches up with that corresponding payment processed through RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. So another non-matching transaction that we do have, this time it is the opposite scenario where I have a payment for Heather Jones that is recorded or has been recorded through RoomKeyPMS payments, but I do not have a corresponding payment recorded in the RoomKeyPMS database. So again, I'm going to follow the instructions on the non-matching transaction section. I'm going to select the transaction itself, and this is now going to give me that pop-up once again, where I can see the transaction with options to resolve the issue on top, and I can review the details of the guest folio for Res ID 1029. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. Perfect. So I see that I have no payments with a Discover card, but what I do see is a transaction for a massage, which matches the amount that was processed on the credit card through the processor there. The other thing that I'll note is that this charge appears on Folio 1. So when I resolve this issue, I want to make sure that I'm posting that payment to Folio 1. You'll notice that in the top right-hand corner, I do have the option to post the payment to either Folio 8 or Folio 1. If there's charges across multiple folios, RoomKey will give you these options whenever you go to create a matching RoomKey transaction. But I'll keep it to Folio 1 here because that's where the charge is. So instead of having to go to this guest folio and process the payment in RoomKey, I can simply select Create Matching RoomKey Transaction. That will process my request and confirm once that has been successfully posted. When I close this window, that's now going to once again update my transaction reconciliation report. That issue no longer appears here on the non-matching transactions. It will drop down into today's reconciliation. And when I expand the Discover card, I can now see the record of that payment coming through. Once again, this is a manual match, so it does have the letter M icon next to it, so I can review the details of that match. Now, I would be able to see now a payment recorded on file for Heather Jones, who is currently in-house. And I would also be able to see that the authorization and transaction ID are now pulled through from the original payment that was processed through RoomKeyPMS payment. Now we have one final example here of non-matching transactions, and I have two transactions that are appearing recorded inside the RoomKeyPMS hotel, but they do not have authorization numbers or transaction IDs, and they do not have corresponding payments recorded in the processor. The other thing that I note about these two transactions is that one is a payment and then it is a refund. And if I look at the timestamps of this payment and the refund, they're quite close together. So what it looks like is that someone has collected payment offline. It did not go through the RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam, and then it was refunded right away. For these records, because they are not recorded in the processor, the cardholder, Greg Moore, would not see this payment and refund on their credit card statement. I am confident that we can ignore these transactions inside the RoomKeyPMS database. They are not affecting the guest credit card, and it does not affect any of the balancing inside RoomKey because these two payment and a reversal cancel each other out for a net amount of $0. So I'm going to, again, follow the instructions on the non-matching transaction section and click the transaction. This time, I'm going to select the Ignore RoomKey transaction. That confirms that it is successfully ignored. And I'm going to do the same for the refund. So I click on the refund for the transaction and I select Ignore RoomKey transaction. So that confirms that those two transactions are ignored. Now, they do not appear as part of today's reconciliation because they were not processed. Those payment amounts were not processed through the RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. So they do not appear as part of today's reconciliation. But you can still review any of those ignored transactions. You can select Show Ignored Transactions. It is a checkbox that appears just down below the date range there. So because they were ignored, they are still technically considered non-matching transactions. So when I select Show Ignored Transactions, they actually reappear here in that non-matching transaction section. Next to them, they do have a letter I icon, and this indicates that they were ignored. And you can see when that ignore function was performed and who actually ignored those transactions. So those are always available to review if needed, but by default, they will not show on the screen unless you select that checkbox. So in today's demonstration so far, I've shown you how we can use RoomKeyPMS payments live inside a database, and then how you can use this reconciliation report to not only reconcile automatically, but it also identifies any issues, and it gives you those tools to be able to resolve any of those issues, whether it's creating a smart match or creating a matching transaction, or if it's simply ignoring those transactions. So now that we've had an opportunity to see some of the functions here in the reconciliation report, also wanted to take a moment to see some of our single sign-on options. So again, this is just a pop-up on screen. It is maximized for the demonstration there, but I can minimize it back down to its normal size. And you can simply close or click the red X in the top right-hand corner, and that brings you back to RoomKey here on screen. So for our single sign-on option, so far we've been talking about processing payments and reconciling those payments between the processor and RoomKeyPMS database. The processor itself does have its own portal. From the reports menu in the online processing section where we found the payment reconciliation report, we also have access to the processor portal from this section. So instead of having to log out of RoomKey and log into a separate location, or maybe log into a web portal externally, you can simply click on Processor Portal here, and this is going to open up the portal for you on screen and sign you in right away. So just like the transaction report, I'm just going to expand this so we can see it full screen. So the processor portal that supports RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam is called Merchant Track. So you can see that listed at the top here. This is the Merchant Track portal. And it does give you access as soon as you log in. It shows you your dashboard view, which gives you an overview of payments that have been recorded in the database so far. Now, this is a demo database, so there are quite a few days where no payments are recorded, but this can be a really helpful tool to access any reporting that you'd like to access for your payment processor. So not only does it show us a daily volumes right away as soon as we log in, on the left-hand side, I can click on Reports, and this will give me access to a full list of reporting that is available with a short description off to the right-hand side. Now, we do have lists of these reports in our support documentation, but I just wanted to show you one quick thing. When you click on a report, you do have the ability to select your start and end dates. You do have the ability to customize these parameters. So you could look at a report for a specific day, or you could look at it for a range of dates, either in the past or for select dates there. So that will always be available whenever you're looking at your reporting here in the Merchant Track portal. Now, the other common use of this portal, in addition to looking at reports, is to do a transaction search. So if there is a transaction that we saw in the reconciliation report, or if there was a transaction that we were trying to find that was processed, but maybe we don't have a record of it in RoomKey, you can use this transaction search to search for a transaction anywhere in the processor. Now, there's a variety of parameters you can select here. You can view transactions by date range. So you've got a start date and end date off to the right-hand side. There's also a tool here where you can search for a credit card or credit card payment by the credit card last 4 digits and select search. Once the search is generated, you'll receive your search results down below. And for each search result, it's going to identify key pieces of information, including the status of that transaction, the amount, and cardholder name. So off to the right-hand side, we can see some names now appearing for these transactions. Now, if you'd like to see more information about a particular transaction, select this one here that's been batched. You can click the transaction ID, and this will expand to show you the details of the transaction. When it was processed, cardholder name, last 4 digits, any of those details, that all appears here. And of course, you do have the ability to print a receipt from the action section in the top right-hand corner. Now, Merchant Track portal does give you the options to void and refund transactions. However, we do not recommend doing that here in Merchant Track. We do recommend that if you need to reverse a payment or adjust or refund a payment amount, that you do that directly inside RoomKey. If I select refund or void here in Merchant Track, it will generate a non-matching transaction that I then have to go fix on the transaction report. So best practice recommendation is to always do a refund or reverse inside RoomKey. So we've seen how this Merchant Track portal can be used. Of course, when we open it up, it shows us the dashboard. We can use it for transaction search or looking at your reporting. Now, some of these functions are permission-based, so everyone will have access to the Merchant Track portal and view the dashboard here and have access to reporting by default. However, some clerk IDs may not have access to terminals or virtual terminal. The virtual terminal is what can be used to process payments, but again, the best practice recommendation is to always use the functions inside RoomKey to take payments, like an advance deposit or a payment at checkout, like we saw earlier today's demonstration. This portal can also be used to set up terminals. You can activate a terminal from this portal. You can also view a list of your active terminals. Terminals in this case refers to any chip and PIN devices that are connected to your computer for the purpose of processing a credit card when a guest is present. So those terminals can all be controlled from one central location, and you can view and update that information from here as well. So because this is a portal, and again, this is in the maximized view here, you can minimize this down. And when you're done either viewing the reporting or doing your transaction search, you can simply close this window, and that will once again return you back to RoomKey here. So that's a pretty broad overview of our newest product using RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. Now, I did mention that there is also some new permission sets that come with this new product. So those permissions appearing in one central group now. So if you're taking a look at your clerk ID permissions, you may see a new section called RoomKeyPMS Payments. Now, by default, as I mentioned, all clerks have access to 2 of the permissions. They can view the transaction search, so they can access that Merchant Track portal and they can search for a transaction. They cannot void or refund by default. They can only search for a transaction there. Then every clerk by default will also have access to that payment reconciliation report. So again, the report that we saw with the transaction reconciliation, they can view that report. That would be view access only. Now, what I do recommend is that for any clerks or staff members that are responsible for reporting, setting up terminals, or performing a match or ignore feature on the reconciliation report, you can give these 4 permissions. The optional permissions displayed at the bottom, those are for those restricted functions inside Merchant Track. So the ability to void, refund, or access a virtual terminal. I would recommend that you reserve those permissions for management, because those functions, like I said, when you perform a void or a refund in Merchant Track, it will cause a non-matching transaction. So it does cause that issue that you have to then go back and resolve instead of just having it automatically fixed whenever you select reverse or refund inside RoomKey. So quite a lot of information there, but good to know if anyone has recently noticed a new section within your clerk permissions. So big question for today, when can you start using these features? For anyone that is based in the United States, we do have this product rolled out right away, so you can get started now. You can contact our inside sales representative, Marie, and we'll include her contact information following today's webinar as well. For anyone that is based outside of the United States, stay tuned for an updated release date. We are working diligently to get this rolled out for our Canadian partners and abroad. So to summarize our presentation for today, RoomKeyPMS Payments powered by Fullsteam is a brand new tool that allows you to streamline your payment processing and support efficient reporting by eliminating that need for manual reconciliation and payment batching. Now open up our floor for any questions. Okay, so I think that William has been diligently answering a bunch of our questions here. And there was one question currently open. We have a member from the Vagabond Hotel just asking if it will be available in Jamaica. So we don't have a timeline yet for outside of the United States, but we will be looking to release that updated information as soon as we have a timeline for outside of the United States. Perfect. So we have another question from Jordan asking, when will gift card interfacing be available with RoomKey Payments? For this one, not too sure where that is on the timeline for our developers, but we don't have a date for that one quite yet. That's for gift card interfacing. So that one I might have to follow up with part of our follow-up messaging for gift card interfacing. So another question from Amy, what is the timeline for within the States? So the United States is already rolled out. You can start using the product. We will give you contact information for our inside sales department. So you can get a demo and a quote for your property. So I have a question again from Vagabond asking if there's any way a member of management can have access to the full credit card number and expiry date. So this is dependent on the credit card, or sorry, whether the credit card has been tokenized or not. So let me just bring up the database here. What you may notice is that the credit card number, it is masked whenever you're viewing the credit card information here on screen. When you select post payment, if the credit card has been used for a payment, it will be masked here as well. You would not be able to view full credit card information. That is part of the requirements that we were required to meet for PCI compliance. So you would not be able to see the full credit card number when it is tokenized in order to align with PCI compliance there. Perfect. So Vagabond is letting me know that they can only access that information currently on Shift4. That's correct. I think Shift4 has that external portal. You would need to log into Lighthouse Transaction Manager and then go through that portal to view your transaction data. So with RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam, we have that single sign-on option from within RoomKey where you can access that processor portal. Oh, perfect. Okay, so I'm just reading a little bit more of that question from Vagabond asking, sometimes we do a new res add-on and the credit card number appears invalid, even though the details have not changed. Okay, so that might be something, I'm not sure where the invalid messaging is coming from. But with RoomKeyPMS payments, that credit card number will remain masked if it has been used. So you're correct, you would not be able to see the full credit card number, and that's to protect the identity of the guest. Now we can do new res add-on, and because the credit card has already been used, you would still be able to use it with RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam. So I think that might be kind of a combination of Shift 4 might have some sort of restriction there, but RoomKeyPMS payments powered by Fullsteam will not restrict you from using that credit card for a new res add-on. So that's that function where you right-click on a reservation and you can use new res add-on to create a copy of the reservation. Okay, so Igamon is letting me know that that they do have another issue, but it sounds like it is not related to it's not related to the payment processing, but rather a question with regards to RoomKey. So that might be something we can follow up with afterwards outside of this presentation there. I do have another question from Allison. She says that on her computer with the terminal, they cannot reverse charges through RoomKey. However, if they go to the computer that isn't attached to a terminal, they can. It is possible that there is a setting or restriction. Is it the same? If it's the same clerk ID on both, there are certain clerks permissions that would restrict you from doing a reversal. That might be something that we need to follow up with our support team. These questions are maybe not related to this product itself, but I can go ahead. Let's see here. I can follow up with you with regards to which permission might be causing that issue where you are not able to process a reversal. So a reversal, just for our purposes today, I'll show you what that looks like here. Here in RoomKey, I can locate a payment and I can reverse a payment. So this is a checked out item. You can right click and select reverse, and this will reverse the payment for you. Anytime you do a reversal, you do need to enter in a reason. I'll just say this is a posting error. When you select OK and do a reversal, that is essentially a refund or giving back that money back to the credit card that was used to process. So we can see that processing as a refund here. And just like we saw earlier in the demonstration, when you select post, you do receive that approval message live on screen. So that has now reversed that payment. If I scroll back down to the bottom of the screen, that reversal or that payment no longer appears on file. And any reversals are automatically moved to folio number 9. So anytime you do reverse a charge or payment, obviously it's been done a couple of times for this guest, you would see the original payment on folio 9 and then the reversal with the corresponding messaging there. So the question that I have from Vagabond is, how about incidentals? Do they have to be released manually? So that is referring to any authorization that you take for incidentals if the guest does not use that amount while they're in-house, at checkout, the amount is released back to the credit card. So here I did a checkout for res ID 1028. Oh yeah, Lisa McDonald right there. So the amount that was processed on the credit card at checkout was less than the authorized amount. The extra authorization is released. Now, it does not release until today's date is batched. So at some time, a little after midnight tonight, it will automatically release back to the guest credit card. Now, this is something that I tell all of the guests that I worked with in hotels, is that it is dependent upon your credit card provider when you start to see that money on your credit card. So if RoomKey automatically releases that incidental amount, but it may be held up by the credit card provider themselves. So it may take a couple days for those funds to actually reappear on the guest credit card. And that is being held, and that is subject to the credit card issuer, not RoomKey and not the payment processor. Oh, awesome. Great question from June, asking how does this work with sundry sales? It works exactly like we've seen so far in RoomKey. So if you go to your operations and sundry sales, you can record a sale here. So we'll just do, let's say, a pet fee. And then when you go to take payment, just like you would for a credit card payment, enter in credit card information. Oh, let me just use a MasterCard here. You can select, oh, I'm not going to print a receipt. I'm just going to select post payment. And that will also trigger your Fullsteam payment window to appear. So just like selecting post payment in RoomKey to pay on a guest folio, you can take payment in sundry sales as well. Again, you would select post and you would receive that approval message live on screen. So that payment and the original charge will now appear. Of course, you can continue to collect payment in much the same way. So I'm just taking a look at our time here. It looks like we are wrapping up our webinar. So I just wanted to thank you to everyone for joining in today. We have a lot of questions, so we will be following up if there's anything extra. If you do have any extra questions, please feel free to fill out the information on the survey. And we look forward to welcoming you back for next month's webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you for watching. For more videos, visit support.roomkeypms.com.